Well, joining us on the phone from Istanbul is Simin Demokan on the reaction. Hey, Simin, what does this mean for the central bank and Mr. Erdogan going forward?
Well, investors were looking for the central bank to prove its independence and restore market credibility, and that's exactly what it's failed to do. They were expecting a rate hike of 100 basis points, and they got nothing at all. But is this a surprise? Not really, because ever since President Erdogan said that he's going to win the election again and go on to an executive presidency, he's going to take more control and responsibility over economic policy and monetary policy. And it's no surprise that President Erdogan hates high rates. He once called them the mother and father of all evil. And he holds an unorthodox view that actually low rates will help slow inflation. So it seems that the central bank not independent at all and actually following in the steps that President Erdogan wants.
And David pointed out direct foreign investment, obviously critical. If you're an investor outside of Turkey and you get this news and you see the disaster in the markets, really, the sell-off in the bond market, sell-off in equities, the lira at a record low, what's the long-term effect of that?
Well, some investors are now saying that unless the central bank holds an emergency meeting in the next few weeks and raises rates then the Turkish financial markets and Turkish assets could see a complete market rout, which is exactly what we're seeing today. So the government and the central bank really needs to do something to get hold of the situation now.
Simin, that makes perfect sense. Does President Erdogan believe he must have to do something? Does he care about the markets, in a nutshell?
Well, sometimes he says that he doesn't. Yesterday, his son-in-law, Berat Albayrak, who Erdogan appointed as the new head of the economy, he's head of treasury, head of finance. Yesterday, he came out and said, we will not fight the markets. We will not, do anything. The central bank is independent. So this is actually quite surprising. We were actually, after that message, thinking that the central bank would be free to go ahead and raise rates by at least 100 basis points, which was what the market was expecting. But, it's Erdogan versus the markets. And even though President Erdogan normally fights and fights and fights, in the end, the markets always win. I mean, since April, the central bank has raised by 500 basis points. So, and that's because the lira was at an all-time record low. Bonds were climbing. So markets do seem to get their way one way or the other.